Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This is a very special bonus episode where we are discussing Netflix 2023 crime thriller Luther, The Fallen Sun. It's directed by Jamie Payne and stars Idris Elba, Cynthia Erivo, Dermot Crowley, and Andy Serkis. I'm Jesse. I'm writing here solo to bring you this episode. As I said, usually we do the Netflix original films in the order of release. This one is a recent one, so I'm keen to talk about it. I'm going to spoil this film as I chat, so if you haven't seen this film, don't want to know anything about it, give us a pause and come back later on. I'm going to lead off with the fast flicks. A quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one's about a disgraced cop who breaks out of jail to hunt down a serial killer. Ooh. This is obviously, I've got to start off and say that this is based, or a continuation of the Luther TV series from the BBC. And this film is written by the series creator, Neil Ross. It's a continuation of that series. So if you're not familiar with the Luther character, you're probably not going to connect with this film as much as some others, but you don't actually need any of that context, I don't think, of the TV series to still enjoy this narrative story. The concept of this film adaptation for the series was first sort of mentioned in August of 2013 when Neil Cross, the creator, revealed that he'd written a script for a prequel to the series. This isn't a prequel, this film, it continues, as I said before. But then we sort of led into July of 2020 where Idris Elba stated that there were no formal plans for another season of the show, but he had interest in returning to the role in a film of Luther. And that's sort of where we've come to, because that was sort of close to happening with it being confirmed in 2021 of September to be released on Netflix, with Cynthia Erivo and Andy Serkis starring alongside Idris Elba in this film. Idris Elba, he announced on the 10th of November 2021 that filming had begun. It took place in London at the Light Studios in Brussels in Belgium as well. And this film holds the notable accolade of managing to film at Piccadilly Circus for longer than any other production ever. And I'll probably talk about this scene in some scenes later on, but they did several night shoots at this famous location, and it's quite an impactful scene. There was a little bit of, not controversy, but I guess around the series, that there are often female victims portrayed in this TV show. So Netflix sort of gave him a little bit of a suggestion on the script for this one, for Cross the writer, and said that, Netflix sort of said maybe we should have a male victim instead of a female victim. So that's an interesting sort of mention of Netflix sort of interrupting in the creative process a little bit with this film. The translations around the world for this one: in Italy it's called Luther to Hell. In Brazil it's called Luther Nightfall. In Japan it's called Detective John Luther, Fallen Sun. In Poland it's called Luther Twilight. In Spain it's called Luther Night Falls. In Taiwan it's called Inspector Luther, The Fall of the Setting Sun. In the Ukraine it's called Luther, The Sun is on the Decline. And in Vietnam it's called Luther Sunset. So all using those terms to do with the sun or night or things like that across the world. This did have a limited theatrical release from the 24th of Feb 2023 before hitting Netflix worldwide on the 10th of March 2023. As I mentioned before, there was filming in London, Belgium, as well as Czech Republic and Germany. It was filmed from March to May of 2021. What are the critics and audiences saying about this one? Mediocre, I guess. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes sits at a 68% on 91 reviews. That's still fresh. Audience has a little bit higher at 85%, but that's less than 50 ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb, 6.4 out of 10. That's on about 35,000 ratings. And Letterboxd sits at a solid 3 out of 5 on 23,500 ratings. And that will lead me into my early thoughts for this one. I was a fan of the show. I really enjoyed this show when it came out. Watched this with my wife. One of my good mates watched this heater from this show, from previous incarnations of this show. He thoroughly enjoyed that show too. So I was happy to see the character of Luther again. Really wanted to see another story with him. And I mean, the story, it's not anything special, but it worked for me. And I guess that's all that really matters for this discussion. So let's have a chat about some of the characters. John Luther, I mean, it's hard to sort of give a backstory on a character that's had 5 series of TV shows, but he's sort of at this stage in his career where he's a brilliant cop, but he's a bit disgraced at the moment. And this follows on from the end of Series 5. So, we know he's a good copper, but he does bad things, but for the right reasons too. And this film is about him making a promise to a lady called Corinne, whose son Callum was killed by this serial killer. So, I mean, I think that's important because Luther is a man of his word, likes to stick to what he says. Adette Rain, she's a new cop, sort of almost Luther's replacement at the police station. She wants very little to do with him as he tries to communicate with her because she sees herself as a righteous cop and doesn't want to associate with someone who's been disgraced. And it sort of switches with her because once her daughter gets involved in the case, we see the other side of her and the lengths that she would go to protect her family and possibly cross that moral line or that legal line as well of what she would do. David Roby, Andy Serkis, this is the serial killer from this film. Obviously very good with technology and technical capabilities, but very twisted mind. And I think Serkis does a good job of showing this sort of weak and pathetic character who, is evil. In the sense of the word evil, this guy is evil. Martin Luther's mate, his partner from the TV show, is good to see him on the screen. He sort of ends up teaming with the police and Luther at the same time to make sure that he does what's right and sort of look out for his friend too, even if he knows he needs to be held accountable for his actions. Only other character really is Archie, who sort of is revealed halfway through the film that he's this corrupt cop. And this is done through a conversation with Roby, who's a serial killer, as well as lots of these shots of his face looking dodgy, so quite funny there. The director, Jamie Payne. He's got 38 directing credits, mainly British TV, including shows like The Bill, Primeval, Call the Midwife, Doctor Who, did Quantico as well, which is an American show, but also the Luther show or series from 2019, and Outlander as well. So quite a good TV background for Jamie Payne. Scenes. What are some scenes I enjoyed? What are some ones I didn't like in this one? It's tricky because like some of these are probably going to be moments that I enjoyed because of my connection with the character Luther, and other than that, the big set pieces like I sort of mentioned before, and one of these set pieces is, I mentioned Corinne before. She gets a call from her son Callum who's been kidnapped and told to go to this house, and there's all these dead bodies hanging from the roof and these phones, all these victims' voices through these phones, and their families arrive, and then the phones catch on fire and the house burns while the killer's sort of outside with this digitalized face. I thought that was super creepy and well done. The prison fight, Luther getting out of prison, that was cool. I think Roby, the serial killer in this film, meets with his wife, who is obviously injured himself, and he starts singing that song, I'm Coming Out. It was so creepy. Serkis did such a good job in that scene. The Piccadilly Square scene that I mentioned before, this set piece with people falling from buildings, just a really good scene, well done. And finally, Archie, this dodgy cop, he sort of gets set up by Roby at the end to go and kill his wife, get rid of her, and we've got Martin there waiting because Luther's tipped him off, and it was just a nice little nice way to sort of finish off the film. Forgettable scenes. Not much, but I think Martin, it's nice to see Martin get on board with this case, but then, he goes to Luther's cell from prison to sort of find this radio message that we know Luther's already called Detective Rain about previously because he had this conversation about this message. So that felt like a bit not needed. And the other part that sort of frustrated me a little bit was towards the end, Adette and Luther, they arrive in Norway, there's, place covered in snow, and they trek across the snow and they tell us, we're 3 miles out from where we need to go. We're 1.5 miles out from where we need to go. It just dragged on for what is already a very lengthy film. So that's the only thing there for that. Themes, ideas. What's this film saying? So I think the idea of shame, we see this through the characters. The fear of being caught is more powerful than death for a lot of these characters. And then as well on the other side, we've got the idea of shame of not being able to express who you are because you're a monster, and that's what some of these people are that are committing these crimes. They are monsters. And then the other idea, the idea of digital footprints too, like online surveillance, what happens when personal information or data gets in the wrong hands, the dangers of the internet too. What did I take away from this one? I think, there's a character from the TV show called Alice. This isn't going to make any sense to anyone that doesn't know the TV show, but there wasn't any mention of Alice in this film, especially she was a part of that downfall of him, which starts this film off of him being put in jail. So I think it was interesting to hear from the writer Cross, who said that he thinks that fan service is a sugar high in a film, and he thinks that while it's tempting for any filmmaker or any writer to do that, he also thinks it would be discourteous to a new audience. So people picking up on this film, not knowing the characters, who see something which they know means something, but they don't know what it is. So that's the reason why Alice wasn't put in this film, which is interesting because it would have been nice to see her. She was one of my favourites from the TV show too. Questions. I sort of touched on this before. I don't think you need any prior knowledge of the TV show to enjoy this, and that sort of backs up what I just said from the writer as well. Is that there's little bits and pieces about characters that those that are familiar with the story would know, but if not, it's okay. Most people could pick this up. And the subtitle for this film, so Luther, the Fallen Son, like Son, S-U-N, not S-O-N. So I'm not sure I really like this title. I don't think it really adds any context to this film, to be honest. Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. Let's put this together. So we give the film a rating out of 5. I mean, like I've said before, for most people, like, this is probably just going to be some sort of mediocre cat and mouse crime film. It's nothing groundbreaking, but there are some really good big set pieces that I enjoyed, and the killer is evil enough that through the performances and the performance of the other characters too, like Luther, there is a lot to like. So I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. 3.5 for me. That's where it's going to sit. We've got socials. We've got Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Give us a follow. Give us a like if you can. This question is just about the final scene. Luther's offered a job. I just want to know who's Luther going to work for now? Who's this corporation or government or agency? Who's he going to work for? I've got no idea. I'm guessing it's something to do with the British government, but who knows? Hopefully it's to do more good in the world. As always, thanks for listening along. Hope you've enjoyed this one. We do have a huge back catalogue of 260 plus episodes. So if there's a Netflix film you've seen, we've probably discussed it. Give us a search, give us a follow, give us a like, and let us know what you think too. As always, we will see you on Wednesday for our regular episode.